In frontman of Dropkick Murphys is on my Facebook.
Is he?
I did not know. I'm like, dude, I'm fucking too Bostoned out now.
Oh no.
How does that happen? Hey, welcome guys to another episode of Deliciously Decayed. I am Rick.
And I'm Dev. Today we're checking out a few different Endicott-era coastal defense forts around Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Right now we are at Fort Wetherill in Jamestown, Rhode Island, but we're going to get a little bit of footage of some of the other ones later on.
And also, while we're here, we're going to check out Providence, Rhode Island, which is the city of sin. And for those that do not know, it's like the mini Las Vegas of New England. What do you think of that?
I mean, we might as well do something sleazy after all this.
It ain't easy being sleazy. Let's explore this bitch.
From Hockomock Swamp to Dighton Rock and everything in between. Petroglyphs and monoliths and things best left unseen. Bridgewater Triangle, dark and creepy corridors, haunted asylums, and don't forget the tunnels. New England and beyond, only for the unafraid. Take a dog journey down an untraveled path that's deliciously decayed. Deliciously decayed. Deliciously decayed.
So between 1890 and 1910, there was a massive construction program across the US. Since the Navy had been focusing mostly on offensive structures and building more ships, the coastal defense was pretty out of date. So a few years before, President Grover Cleveland put together what was called the Endicott Board. This was made up of the US Secretary of Defense, who was leading it, and included members of the Navy, the Army, and some civilians. Their goal was to evaluate the currently existing coastal defense structures and determine what they needed to do to modernize it. They came up with a $127 million plan that mostly focused on reinforcing concrete fortifications and installing updated mortar and artillery batteries, and also submarines, because submarines. In the end, they ended up either modernizing or building 81 forts across the US, including the ones that we're checking out today. Like many of the other forts, Fort Wetherill in Jamestown, Rhode Island, was abandoned after World War II. Since it was no longer in service, the state of Rhode Island decided to purchase the property and turn it into a state park. So even though this one doesn't have signs describing the history like a lot of other of these forts do, you can still walk around it and sort of check out what the forts were like and get an idea of what it was like to be in these forts at that time, so that's pretty cool. There were no shadow people, just a doorway. Okay, so when this place was originally built during the Revolutionary War, they ended up calling it Dumpling Rock Battery, which really doesn't sound very intimidating. So I guess later on they just kind of upgraded it to a fort and renamed it Connecut Fort, or Fort Connecut, sorry, which is not the same thing as Connecut Battery, which is across the island. So I guess that was probably confusing, and maybe that's why they still kept calling it Fort Dumpling. So they still ended up renaming the place 2 more times after that. One was Fort Lewis, one was Fort Brown. They don't even know who they named Fort Brown after because there were 2 different people with that name. But they still kept calling it Fort Dumpling anyway.
This is Commander Cutie Pie reporting from Fort Dumpling, ma'am.
That is too bad because a little while after that, the government got some more property, knocked Fort Dumpling down, and turned it into Fort Wetherill.
Well, I'm still a cutie pie.
This is true.
All right, come out of jail. Is it haunted? I'd say yeah. Speaking of Fort Wetherill specifically, there's some pretty dark corners in that place where there's absolutely no natural light. And it does have a feel to it. You could hear some noises. You know, if I was a paranormal guy, I might take my gear down there and check it out. There has been some murders, which you will hear about. Also, there is a little bit of an urban legend, a fable. You will also hear about that. My nemesis, the demon dog. So apparently there's this creature called the devil's dog that haunts these corridors. It has big red glowing eyes, massive fangs, and it's probably gonna follow me home. And this undead, unneutered bastard is gonna eat my trash, puke all over my carpet, hump my leg, and piss on my camera. I can hear him right now, did you hear that? So anyways, yeah, apparently some British sailors saw this thing, they went crazy, they killed themselves, it's on the internet, it's completely true, just like everything else. You could look it up, wikipedia.com.
So this episode would not be complete if we didn't talk about murder, because we always have to talk about the murders. And there were actually 4 of them here. So sometime in the 1980s, there were 4 women who were killed, and their bodies were dumped around the docks area, somewhere near here. And at some point after that, the cops started getting calls about paranormal activity, and there are really over 200 calls that were really documented. So, couldn't find further detail on what they were, but they were there.
So we did some additional exploration with some of the other Endicott era coastal forts. 2 of them in particular. There was Fort Rodman, previously called Fort Tabor, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and Fort Revere, named after Paul Revere, of course, in Hull, Massachusetts. We did go to a few others as well, so you will see some additional footage. And like most of the forts built at that time, they were built upon structures that were previously fortified. They were upgraded throughout the World Wars with weaponry, the batteries, different things like that. And after World War II, they were mostly abandoned and turned into public parks. Well, that seems to conclude another episode of Deliciously Decayed. What'd you think of this place?
I liked it. It's been a little while since I've been to any forts, so it was pretty cool to just kind of walk around and really see what the soldiers at that time saw.
Yeah, these nice little quaint New England towns are pretty cool. They're laid back. I'm not a super fan of all the people that show up,
But pretty much everything is a lot of people these days.
this is true. And for something called a defensive battery, it's a little disappointing there was no outlets because I really wanted to plug in my phone and check this. I had this eBay war going on
Oh,
for
yeah?
a possessed doll. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Since ours isn't getting possessed yet.
Not yet. Oh well, hey, whatever. Remember to hit that like, smash that sub, and I'm Rick.
And I'm Dev. See you in New England's darkest corners.